The Stranger in My Home. A chilling story of unseen terror and the slow realization that you are never truly alone. Chapter 1: The Unsettling Feeling. Sophia had lived alone for almost a year now. After her divorce, she moved into a small but cozy apartment on the quieter side of town, looking for peace and a fresh start. The building wasn't fancy, but it was safe, and the neighbors mostly kept to themselves. It was exactly what she needed. At first, life in her new home felt refreshing, waking up to silence, decorating her space however she wanted, cooking meals just for herself. But after a few months, something changed. It was the little things at first. A window left open when she was certain she had closed it. The feeling of something being slightly off when she walked through the door, as if someone had just been there a moment before. A shadow moving in the corner of her eye, but when she turned, there was nothing. She tried to brush it off as paranoia. Maybe she was just adjusting to living alone after years of marriage. Maybe she was imagining things. But then, the changes became harder to ignore. One evening, as she settled onto the couch with a glass of wine and a book, she noticed something strange. Her blanket, the one she always folded neatly over the armrest, was now draped over the back of the couch. Sophia frowned. She was meticulous about how she left things. She would have noticed if she had left it like that. Her stomach tightened, but she shook her head. I must have just forgotten. She convinced herself it was nothing. But deep down, a whisper of unease had already taken root. Chapter 2: Signs That Can't Be Ignored. Over the next few weeks, Sophia found more things out of place. A coffee mug she hadn't used sitting in the sink. The fridge door slightly open in the morning. A faint smell of cologne lingering in the air, one that wasn't hers. She checked the locks every night, made sure the windows were shut, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. One night, as she was brushing her teeth, she caught sight of something in the mirror that made her blood run cold. Her closet door was open. She never left it open. Heart hammering, she turned, staring into the darkness of the closet. She hesitated for a long moment before slowly stepping forward. She grabbed the door and yanked it wide open. Nothing. Just clothes. Letting out a shaky breath, she scolded herself. You're acting ridiculous. But as she turned back toward the sink, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. The bathroom door. She had closed it before she started brushing her teeth. Now, it was slightly ajar. Someone had been in there with her. A chill ran down her spine. Chapter 3: The Hidden Camera. Sophia didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every distant noise sent her heart racing. The next morning, exhausted and on edge, she decided to take action. She bought a small security camera and installed it in her living room, facing the front door. If someone was entering her home, she would have proof. That night, she locked up as usual, checked the windows twice, and placed a heavy chair against the front door for extra security. She fell asleep gripping her phone, her heart racing even in sleep. The next morning, she checked the footage. At first, there was nothing. Hours passed in silence. Then, at around 3 a.m., the screen flickered, and her breath caught in her throat. The front door didn't open. No windows moved. But someone stepped into the living room. A tall figure, dressed in dark clothes, emerged from the hallway inside the apartment. He stood there for several minutes, watching. Just watching. Then, as if sensing the camera, the figure turned his head directly toward it. Sophia's stomach lurched as she saw his face. It was a stranger. A man she had never seen before. And worst of all, he had been in the apartment the entire time. Chapter 4: The Horrifying Truth, Extended Ending. They found him. Sophia's hands trembled as she played the footage back over and over. Where had he come from? The front door hadn't opened. The windows hadn't moved. There was only one explanation. Her eyes flicked toward the closet. A wave of nausea hit her as realization sank in. This man hadn't been breaking in. He had been living there. Sophia's breathing became shallow. Was he still here? She grabbed her phone and ran out of the apartment, dialing 911 as soon as she reached the hallway. The dispatcher's voice was calm, but her own was shaking. There's someone in my apartment. I don't know who he is, but I have video proof. He's been living inside my home. The minutes felt like hours as she waited for the police. The hallway felt too open, too exposed. What if he came out now? What if he knew she had discovered him? Red and blue lights flashed through the windows as the officers arrived. They searched the apartment while Sophia stood outside, arms wrapped around herself, trying to control her breathing. Then, one of the officers came out, his expression grim. We found something. Sophia hesitated before stepping inside. They led her to the closet. Behind the rows of hanging clothes, there was a small, almost invisible panel in the wall. It had been loose. And behind that panel? A hidden crawl space. Inside, there was a small mattress, empty food wrappers, water bottles, and a knife. Sophia felt her stomach drop. He had been living inside her home for God knows how long. Watching her. Moving around while she slept. Then, before she could process the horror of it, one of the officers' radios crackled. We got him. Back stairwell. He was trying to run. Sophia's breath caught. The police had him. They rushed her downstairs, and that's when she saw him. A man, thin, disheveled, pale like he hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. His dark hoodie was pulled up, but as the officers forced him to face her, their eyes met. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She didn't recognize him. But he recognized her. And the way he smiled, just a small, eerie twitch of his lips, made her blood turn to ice. You finally noticed me, he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear before they shoved him into the back of the police car. Sophia couldn't breathe. Her home, her safe space, had never truly been hers. And the scariest part? She had no idea how long he had been watching. Final thoughts. The stranger in my home is a terrifying reminder that sometimes, the real horror isn't what you imagine in the dark, it's what has been there all along, unseen and waiting. Would you ever feel safe again?